Hi, Wendy. You want to unmute yourself? You're the first one here. You know how these masterminds go, you know, lots of people sign up, not everybody shows up. But, so we're always giving it an extra 5 minutes so that people can come in. Hi, Wendy. Hi, Shirley. Hi, Paul. Unmute yourselves quickly just to say hi, so I know you're actually there. I just saw you for a few seconds there, Wendy, but you disappeared again, so I couldn't say hi. Hi, Sharon. Unmute yourself for a second just to say hi. Hi, Ed Wadinsky. Great to see you again. Yeah. How's meditation?
I will unmute long enough to say hi. I don't feel like I can have my video on, but I'm so glad that you're having this. Thank you so much.
Oh, so cool. What triggered you most? I mean, I sent so many different stories regarding why I'm doing something on salad. What triggered you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I can tell you I've been paralyzed in bed with back pain for 3 days, so looking at the screen a lot more than I might normally. Yeah, it was just in the top of my feed in my email, and I'm not going anywhere, so I clicked on it.
Awesome. And I would love to give you some tips how to disappear that back pain.
Super. I'm ready to receive.
All right. Giving it 2 more minutes for people to show up. Like I said, it's always just a fraction of the people who actually register who show up, but it's all beautiful because it will be on my YouTube channel for people to review at a later time as well. Anybody else want to tell me what triggered them to be interested in salads? It seems such a mundane topic, right?
I can tell you that I'm just a heavy salad eater. I've been vegetarian since 1984 and got a certificate in natural hygiene about 20 years ago in the Transformation Institute. And
wow, so you know Joe Willard, or you knew Joe Willard?
No, its name was Dr. Neil, starts with a D.
Not Sheldon.
No. I know who Sheldon is, but yeah. No, that's not who was at the Transformation. Sinayadak. It was Robert Sinayadak is the doctor.
No. Oh, I'd love to learn more.
Anyways, I'm a big salad eater. I love salad, and I'm a grower. I teach farm to table. I teach people how to grow food and preserve food, and I just love fresh food, and farmers markets are my favorite place because I'm a farmer and that's where my tribe is.
Oh, cool. So you're actually doing some of the growing.
That's my art and my addiction. I can't not grow. In fact, even in massive restriction with no space, I've got pots of things because I just love it.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. I could use your help right now. I so want to grow a garden, but I just don't seem to find the time. Okay. We are at the 5-minute mark. First name, last name, would you like to introduce yourself? We don't know who you are, but I'm happy you're here. Ask to would you please unmute yourself? I can't unmute you from here. No? Okay. It's fine too. All right, all right. So this is yet another mastermind with the mundane and silly title, What's in Raw Salad? Like as if we didn't know what's in raw salad, right? Everybody knows what's in raw salad. But there's so much more to know. And yes, I got that twinkle in my eye because there's just so much behind this title that we may not be aware of. And that's why I'm having this mastermind in particular. So just quickly, who am I? I'm Professor Johanna Sophia of Johanna's Raw Foods and Coaching and the Rawsome Life Project. Check out Rawsome Life Global. And who else joined us right now? Okay, Monique is in, okay. And we want to learn why I'm doing these masterminds is because I love exploring particular topics and most of the time seeing how everything is interconnected on this little planet, in this little universe that we call our home. So I'm going to start with the big question, what is food? What is food? If anybody wants to chime in, I always like to see your faces and I always like to hear your, Wendy is saying in the chat, sunlight, yeah, can be food, is actually a necessary ingredient for all food. But let's just stick to what we say is food. Some matter that provides nutrients, right? And energy, yeah, exactly. Sharon is saying, to any kind of living entity on this planet. So everything on this planet that is growing and dying requires nourishment, and we call that food. The bee has a different kind of food from the giraffe, and the elephant has a different kind of food from the mouse. And even though we have stories about them, they may be different. The lion has a different kind of food from the deer, and so forth and so forth. And just to take a little bit of a broader look. So we have all these species on the globe that live, that are live entities, from a flower to an elephant, from the tiniest little insect in the ground to the largest trees in the forests. We have all these live entities. What do they have in common? How do they all absorb their nutrients? And we get to a very simple answer, 11 million species, or we don't really have the exact number because there's so many subspecies among all these tiny little critters, right? Especially the ones that we've hardly even explored in the earth and in the air, and the ones that we can only identify under the microscope, etc. So what do they all have in common? They absorb their food how? Oh, my cats always have little barbecue parties and they invite the neighboring cats and then they roast there are mice over the fire, and my dogs get the pot on the fire and put their food in there. And what else? The ants have little parties where what do? They bake things in a solar oven underground. All right, what am I trying to illustrate here? How do they all consume their nourishment, their food? Any answer? Wendy says, I believe we don't need to eat. Well, that is a very questionable statement. Of course, we can fast, we can, etc., but there are limited periods of time. And of course, we also absorb nutrients from the air. And like you said, sunlight from the air in particular, because there's a lot of living entities in the air. What's in the air that's alive? Tiny little trillions of bacteria and what we call parasites and what we call fungi and what we call all kinds of things that are actually in the air. If they weren't in the air, if the air were sterile, we could not live in it. So everything that we ingest to keep our life going has to be in what format? That's really what I'm asking. Do the cats, the wild cats out there, really have their grill party? Does the giraffe pick a lot of grass and take it home and cook a soup? Here we go. Of course, Wendy has the answer. No, all 11 million species or more, whichever they are, consume their nourishment, their food, raw. Why do you think that is? And why do you think humans started eating dead food as opposed to live food? Now, I don't want to go too much into that, but we can see when we just observe biology, and that's really where I want to go next. When we observe biology out there, every cell, every little entity, every bacterium, every critter, and every elephant for that matter, ingests nutrients so as to grow new cell tissue. Because life is, in and of itself, the reproduction of new cell tissue, the biology of it. Of course, you know, there may be very well be the spiritual aspect and the consciousness aspect of it. But as far as the biology goes, we really should all understand, but science is a very schizophrenic world at this time in history, or has been for a while. Schizophrenic means that this part of the understanding doesn't translate into this part of the understanding, right? Here we believe that it's all just dead matter reacting to something. And here we believe that that we have to modify the living plant so that it grows differently. So we acknowledge that it is alive and grows. So when I have anything that is food for other species on this planet, it is consumed by all other species alive, because that's, of course, we then can argue that's where the nutrients are most dense. That's where we can actually, where our biology is ready to absorb all the minerals and the vitamins and the phytonutrients and the fungi and all the things that we need are in those living things that we ingest. Now, we can also argue some of us, of all our species, some of us species on planet Earth have the biology to digest other living entities, as in larger creatures. We call them carnivores. So when a carnivore consumes a smaller animal, there is a biological process for the digestion of that animal. And I'm just going to cut to the chase. You know, in my lectures, I do these drastic little stories, taking people into this world of going out and hunting a rabbit with your teeth. When a carnivore swallows another piece of flesh or a whole living animal, how does that carnivore creature then swallow that whole thing? And how does it digest that matter? It does that by having an esophagus that opens. Think of the large birds, think of the lion, think of the snake swallowing a whole mouse or rat, or depending on its size, of course. So some creatures actually have the capacity of swallowing raw flesh. And again, it's raw flesh that they swallow. Even the hyena doesn't cook the food, even though, you know, they prefer dead creatures, rotting creatures. They get all the maggots and all of that stuff in there. That's alive as well, of course. So when a carnivore swallows, the skin, the bones, the tissue, the cartilage of that other animal and the flesh is digested by what? We kind of all know that. Acid. Carnivores have an enormous amount of acid in their stomach, and it's hydrochloric acid for the most part. What does hydrochloric acid do? If anybody gets it on their skin, as concerns humans in particular, because we don't have a dense fur that protects us, it melts the skin. It literally, you know, we call it burn because it looks similar to fire burn, but it literally melts the skin. And that's why, you know, humans have used acid as a weapon against other humans. So carnivores, however, have so much hydrochloric acid in their stomachs that they can melt that other creature and digest it in that way. And it's a very fast digestion process, not the slow process of herbivores. So just to round that out, so all creatures are divided into categories of how they digest, and we just typically only mention the two categories, carnivores and herbivores. And the human species clearly falls into the herbivore category. Very clearly, we don't have the acid, we don't have the esophagus that opens up, we don't have the teeth to actually tear a living rabbit with our teeth. We don't have the typical things of a carnivore. And yes, of course, then people say, well, that's why we started cooking, so that we could eat animal flesh, flashing flesh, so that we could eat that flesh and swallow it, break it down into smaller pieces, swallow it and digest it, because herbivores, contrary to carnivores, have more digestion using enzymes. So we use more enzymes, the carnivores uses more acid. All right, so just to get that out of the way, that is another reason, or maybe one of the reasons why humans started cooking, burning, as in grilling, baking, as in heating in a confined space, boiling, again, you know, cooking, we call that in general, etc., so that those materials that our body is not made to digest could still be used for nourishment. Now, they will never, ever meet the category of nutritiousness that we have when we eat the food that our body is made to or designed to, whichever, it doesn't really matter who invented the human body. I think we did. We went outside the body. But yeah, so we actually have the constituency of an herbivore with the long intestines and the enzyme digestion, and we need plant food. Now, of course, with the cooking of animal flesh and with the cooking altogether and with the preserving foods in the colder areas of the planet, and probably there were times when the whole planet was colder or the whole planet was hotter. We're only just beginning to understand that there were other eras on planet Earth with high cultures, mind you, where the planet looked very different. It doesn't fit well into the current narrative that we still hold on to for dear life, that we are the best ever, especially we, the Europeans. Ha, ha, ha. I learned relatively early that that is not the case. So, 2 raw salads. What's in our raw salad? So we could say that the best food that humans could eat, we define as salad, right? Oh, that's all you eat, salad all day? Which is what my friends would used to say to me. Because this is what we consider a salad, right? I mean, this looks relatively pretty now, but that's what salad has been reduced to being: lettuce, tomatoes, cucumber, for the most part, in every diner in the US and Europe, etc. So that's your basic salad. However, since we could eat, oh dear, I need to let Derry in. Hi, Derry, and welcome. So we're in the middle of what's in your salad. So we're actually just getting to what's in your salad. What's in the American diet? What happened to the American diet? Yes, we have reduced our salad to this, and statistics have it that, I don't know, a large percent, I think 30–40% of American citizens don't eat any fresh raw food, other than maybe an onion ring on your burger, or one lettuce leaf on your burger, or a slice of tomato here and there. And in some cases, people don't even eat plants, or rather vegetables, what we consider vegetables, right? Because fruit, well, if it's in your strawberry ice cream, if it's even real strawberries that are in there, but your onion rings on your burger, on your white bun, etc., are so little that the human cell tissue cannot properly replicate. And, to get back to the biology, that's what we kind of have done to ourselves in the advanced, highly processed supermarket diet, that we have deprived ourselves of exactly what enables us to reproduce cell tissue easily and function in the world without dis-ease all the time. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't need to tell you, I'm sure all of you are aware, that dis-ease has become the biggest business in the Western world, right? Especially in this country. So when dis-ease becomes a business, obviously it's in the interest of those who own those businesses to have us be dis-eased so that they can offer us something to supposedly make us more at ease, or we call that then health. Mm-hmm. But it has to collapse itself again and again with other side effects, etc., to keep us in dis-ease because a business needs to maintain and grow its business, right?
Mhm.
Boom, there it is.
Mhm.
So
So true.
thank you. But back to why raw and what do we want? I have a lot of things here on my desk, you know, when I'm going to show you in a minute. Because life on planet Earth actually remains raw all the time until there is a death of one species. And even out of that death, out of the decomposition, arises new life of some form, different species probably. And I wanted to show you what's in my salad because this is always the most clear evidence. Why do we want our plants to be alive when we consume them? Look at this onion. Right? Some people think, oh, don't eat the onion when it's growing. It's not good anymore. I never understood why that would be the case. You see how it's growing? And actually, I just cut it half an hour ago. And now I cannot press it back together because it is already growing, bulging out of here. And these sprouts are growing further. So we want to actually consume this onion while it is alive. And that is true for everything that's on my desk here and behind me in that big bowl. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more, but I wanted to give you the background. Now, what does that understanding that we need raw salad have to do with politics? A little bit I mentioned is the medical industrial complex that does not thrive on us being healthy.
Healthy. Mhm.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But we have, of course, also gone into broad agricultural industries that intentionally will take away natural food growing from a population and plant monocrops, because again, that's the business model of our agriculture and of our medical complex and of our military complex, etc. So we want monoculture in this phase in history. Hopefully we're going to get out of it soon, but we're still in it, where we literally desertify. We create deserts because we extract the nutrients without allowing the decay to revitalize the soil and the whole system. And that can be shown by way of this, what we actually call desertification of whole landscapes. The earliest very man-made example of that is, which most people don't know, is the Dust Bowl in the American history. In the early 1900s, those were the first couple of decades where heavy chemicals were used on agriculture, nitrates and other chemicals, to create fast growth of and taller growth of plants and large swaths of monocrops. And that caused actually the complete death of the soil and allowed the winds to blow over the entire Middle American region that became the Dust Bowl. At first, when we first learned about it, we learned that, oh, it was a natural disaster, these kind of things happen. But it wasn't. It was the first chemical agricultural well, it wasn't even an experiment, because they were so convinced, and for a few years it really brought these huge yields, etc. And then, of course, the deprivation of the soil caused the end of that culture. A couple of words for the soil. The soil, good soil, is, of course, in and of itself, an entire culture of critters. Topsoil, which is where most of the nutrients come from for plant growth, is alive when it's good soil. And again, when you use too much chemicals, pesticides and herbicides in particular, you kill, of course, pesticides kills insects, and these tiny little entities in the soil are the first ones to die because they're even smaller than your bees. You know, we're all concerned about the bees. Yeah, right, we should be. But all the other much smaller critters that make dirt into topsoil, into that dark, wonderful, crumbly matter in which the best plants grow. When you kill that, you basically kill life on planet Earth. So then even your lion can't find a gazelle to eat because the gazelle depends on the weeds to be eaten that should grow in healthy soil, right? So, I mean, even to go into the complete wilderness, we will still find the same erosion of all of life when we destroy the micro life in our soil. And the same is true for the air. In our air, we have the same thing when Wendy says, but we can live on without eating, right? Then I say, yeah, only because when the air is alive, when the air is like we had a couple of days ago here in New York, when we had that incredible smoke coming down from Canada, if that would have lasted for 4 weeks and maybe double the intensity of it, you would have seen life dying. So again, when you start killing the micro life, then life ends. Now, how come we can all stay alive with so much cooked food everywhere, from China to Russia to Germany to Africa to everybody cooks their food now and grills their barbecues, right? Let alone America. How do we even stay alive? And that feeds back into what Wendy was saying, that we actually still have enough life in the air and even in our contaminated waters and in those few bits of raw food that people still get to consume. Maybe there's an apple here or there. Because even your OJ, your traditional OJ, doesn't have any life in it because it is pasteurized, right? What does pasteurization mean? Dead. Sorry, I love being drastic and kind of childish, but that's, yeah, that's exactly the point. So, and of course, our life is substantially shortened, substantially. All other mammals have a life expectancy of at least 10 times their sexual maturity age. And that would put us at least 120, 130, right? Because we don't really want 10-year-old girls having babies, right? Which would be sexual maturity and allowing or anticipating that a 10-year-old can actually raise a family. So we should really look at 14 years. And indeed, 140, 150, 160 would be normal human life expectancy. Have we had that? Only in very small pockets of the globe in my lifetime, and decreasingly so. Because of course now even the airspace, even the chemtrails and the waters and the clouds and the ocean waters are beginning to be so contaminated that it reaches everybody. You know, when we get these statistics that 85% of all water in lakes and rivers and creeks and in oceans are full of plastic, for example, contain plastic particles and other forever chemicals. But I don't want to talk too much about chemicals. I want to get back to this life force that actually allows us to have this longer, well-nourished lifespan. Now, I don't know whether I can get there because my first 30 years were not that. Actually, my first 50 years were not really that. So there's a lot of contamination. Of course, also our genetic material is hampered, or is what's the word, is deteriorated, if you will, because our parents had very poor diets and very poor understanding of what is healthy and what is otherwise a healthy lifestyle. And then, of course, we introduced chemicals, but we're not the first ones to introduce poisonous stuff into our lifestyle. I do want to make that clear. It's not the last 200 years that for the first time we were using poisons. What did the Romans use? Those of you who've been with me for a while, know that I like to bring up these examples. What did the Romans have in their culture? Anybody? You have to unmute yourselves. I'm not seeing, you can also put it in the chat. How did they make their plates and their goblets? Out of what material?
With lead?
Yes, ma'am. Wendy is the superstar here. Lead, absolutely.
I was a certified lead remediator once upon a time.
Oh, congratulations. So you know a lot about it. Yes, but not the Romans were also not the only ones using lead as a main cultural material to make their whole plates and bowls, etc. And something else that they had in common with the Japanese, for example, that the women would make lead paste and put it on their face, or even eat it to make themselves pale or translucent.
Chinese too.
Try these two.
The Chinese too. They did it too.
There are several paints too.
The Chinese too.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
There are several paints containing lead even today. I've oftentimes had dishware, especially coffee cups from Mexico, that look very, shall we say, the clay and the color looks very sort of natural, indigenous, but the paint has very, very heavy lead in it. It's not food safe. And I'm just sort of an intuitive yellow canary, a canary in the coal mine, and I can sense it. And it's just, I've run into it several times and actually challenged people, and they went and had it tested and said, you're straight on right.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. And so and that's just one example. I like to challenge people to come up with other examples of where humans have surrounded themselves with materials that were toxic and poisonous.
The irony of it was that those that were the wealthy and the emperors were the ones that had these sort of special treatments and access to it, and they had their personal private alchemists that were actually introducing all these different harmful chemicals that was actually killing them. Their wealth was their downfall, and it was poisoning themselves through various means, taking it internally as well as to makeup and things like that.
Yes, and that's the other irony. It was often poisonous. The use of poison was often a status symbol.
Status, exactly. It's the
had
irony of
more lead cutlery and plates and goblets, etc. You were of higher status.
Exactly.
The same is true for, of course, Chinese foot binding, which would make the little girl's feet literally rot alive, because when you have your toes growing this way and you tie them, the toes would grow in like this and into each other's flesh. It's so gruesome. If anybody ever had a broken toe, and knows how painful it is to walk with that. Can you imagine having all 10 toes broken and walking on that, or being supposed to be walking on that? It's just, it's unbelievably painful. So some say that's where opium use started. So you would also give those girls opium so that they wouldn't faint all the time. Talking about fainting, of course, you know, we get to the corsets, et cetera, but not to spend too much time on that. There was also arsenic that was used as medicine, and there was mercury that was used as medicine for centuries. So, and I'm sure there's a lot more that I don't even know about.
That's what killed the first emperor of China.
Mercury? There you go. Yeah.
He went to, it was a magic potion to make him live forever. It killed him.
Oh, now you know a lot about Chinese culture, I believe, right?
A little bit.
Yeah. So when you have empires, you create cultures, and often you make the culture coercive so that everybody has to follow that culture. And if they don't, they are expendable bodies that you don't want. So you either find ways to kill them or poison them or enslave them or sell them, et cetera. So interestingly, just this morning, because I've been thinking about all these connections, you know, with my raw salad stuff, which I'm going to still show you in a minute, and how it all connects, of course, with our agricultural customs and cultures around the globe. And just this morning, I'm hearing a younger Zimbabwean, I think he's an economist actually, and he talks about, his name is Rutendo Matinyarare. Yeah. I would say look him up. I'd have to type him in here for you to understand. And he is talking in this one interview, he is talking about how colonialization has taken away all the indigenous ways of eating and doing forest farming, so to speak, growing within natural settings all over the world. And then I thought, oh my God, yes, of course. Think of the indigenous Americans. Think of the South Americans living in the Amazons, and et cetera, everywhere. People, and I met this Vietnamese woman when I was teaching in Germany for a while, who told me that, her mother found all their food out in the woods and the fields in nature, and they were eating it fresh and raw. So it is not something that us crazy New Agers invented and suddenly we want to eat only salad, right? It is actually the original human food that got contaminated. But when this young man, Rutendo, was explaining how now the entire African continent is deprived of its own natural food growing and understanding of how that works, because just like all over the Caribbean and Latin America, you know, the large food corporations came in there and just flattened everything, grew only corn, only bananas, only cotton, only et cetera, monocultures, and always with chemicals. And now, of course, for the last 50 years, that's how long it goes back already, with genetically modified seeds that are engineered to grow plants that in and of themselves then are infertile, so that you have to keep buying the next set of seeds. So with all this going on, humanity really shooting itself in the foot big time, because when you create infertility on that scale, what are you doing? You're eliminating life on planet Earth in the longer run. And there's a curve that, you know, we just are hitting the tipping point And the curve gets steeper if we don't counteract fast. So not only do we make ourselves infertile, and again, I have my personal story dealing with infertility and finally having my 2 children. And so I have that experience. And of course, in Europe, the birth rates have been regressing for decades. But yeah, we're doing it to ourselves with these few crazy eugenicists thinking that, we are overpopulated, which is ludicrous. But what is more important is that we need to understand that our really original nutrients have been degraded to an extent that we need to claim back plant life in a healthy way, and we need to claim back those nutrients in their living state if we want to have a happy, healthy life. And in a couple of months, this lady over here is going to be 70. So I am quite proud of myself, or only when I look at other people, and yes, it is not nice of me to think sometimes, oh my God, that person is younger than I am. Too bad. But, of course, it's ignorance and it's not knowing. And that's why I'm doing these masterminds also, because it is so easy and so luscious and so incredibly wonderful. And we can create all the culture we want. We can have elaborate cakes and drinks and everything made out of fresh plant life. And that's why I wanted to do this salad thing, because it's the only thing left that people know is eaten raw. Apples maybe, but then, people make cooked applesauce and eat a lot more of that than fresh apples. Or they make apple pie again, Then, all right, what's on my desk? Okay, I'm gonna tilt the camera a little bit. Let me see, hopefully. Looky here. All this stuff is on my desk, and what's behind me in that big bowl over there? I'm going to grab it and bring it over here. Okay, but here, let us look. This is what I just brought in just before I started the mastermind.
Wow.
These are just 2 wild plants that happen to be in my backyard.
Yay.
That is dandelion.
Wild lettuce.
It's delicious.
Yeah, well, dandelion, of course, gets bitter on its own, but you're absolutely right. And then there is what is called garlic mustard. I'm sure it has a better name, but those leaves, those little leaves here, and also these round ones here, are delicious, when added to your salads or your savory smoothies. Okay. Then I have my regular, of course, this is all Americans know as salad, romaine lettuce, cucumbers, and tomatoes. Nothing wrong with them, but the nutrients are very minimal in there. Then I have some peas here. Wonderful, whether they're fresh or frozen, incredibly nutritious. Now, what's next to the peas, I'm going to do a little later.
Now, you realize they had to be cooked in order to be frozen. Cannot have raw frozen peas because they don't. They cook them to freeze them.
Really?
It's not, yeah, if you study any freezing, especially commercial, you have to what's called parboil. You just freeze fresh food without parboiling it.
I freeze a lot of berries and stuff myself every summer, and they look just like the frozen berries that I have here.
I do too, but I can guarantee you commercially they're not, they are parboiled.
Okay, so they're pasteurized basically.
Yeah, and also I just teach people how to preserve, and I've been told by the Wisconsin State Health Department that I cannot teach people to freeze raw food.
That's ridiculous. Of course, I do it all the time. All right, so here we have blueberries, strawberries, raspberries. Those are the most well-known berries, of course, in the US, but there are many, 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 many more berries of all kinds that are edible. up into the most northern parts of the world and down into the tropical arenas. So here I have our favorite dressing that is actually, I always make homemade dressing because, I mean, from dressing, I do know that it is definitely pasteurized when we have any kind of store-bought dressings, right? Those are always pasteurized. So this is very quickly. Okay, actually, no, I'm going through this so that I can put my face back on so you can see what I'm saying. Back here is just as one example, raw tahini. And again, I mean, I don't think they could say raw if it were also pasteurized. But then again, raw sunflower seeds are now called raw, even though they're pasteurized. So I wouldn't be, and of course, I wouldn't be surprised. And of course, pepper, and I use Celtic sea salt. It's not in the jar that it comes in, but it also is alive because it contains plant particles. All right, then we have here nuts and seeds. And of course, there are lots and lots of different seeds. And here we have something that is a raw burger.
Burger.
And
Yay,
in
beef
this
burger.
case, a beet
Beef burger.
So why is that raw? Because if there were whole pieces of seeds still in here, whole seeds, they would actually grow because it has not been heated above 120 degrees. Back here, we have cashew cheese. Now, cashews are always debated as not being raw, and still there's a big difference between roasted and the ones we call raw. That again have wild, this is cashew cheese with wild greens in it. Then we have a raw applesauce. Is a great addition to certain, of course it goes brown, apples go brown when they're exposed to air, right, to oxygen. And here we have a pesto that is also a wild crafted pesto. Let me see. Again, it goes dark when it's exposed to oxygen. When it was fresh, it was bright green. And it actually has garlic, mustard, and since it was frozen in the winter, of course, just in the early days of spring, we have chives, wild chives out here a lot in big bunches.
Wow.
That's what's in that pesto. All right, here we have, and again, these are all just the northern hemisphere plants. Oh man, this is heavy. Look what's here. Kale, celery, zucchini, carrot. There's a mango in here. It's not quite ready yet. Of course, that comes from further down south. Then there's lemon, orange, avocado, broccoli,
Banana.
cauliflower, and a banana. Always a banana.
That's right.
Don't want the banana republics. And a green pepper, and of course, green, red, yellow. They're all wonderful, and so much more. So I wanted to take the time to at least show you that there's a plethora of plants. And this is just a tiny little excerpt of all the plants that you can put even in your salad, or you can call all the things you make in the raw salad and or dessert, which of course is another mastermind that I need to do on. Oh, and here's another example of carrots that are not treated. This, if I leave this lying around long enough, will grow little leaves again. Or
Carrot greens.
Carrot greens are very, very tough. So even the Vitamix doesn't break them down sufficiently, but they're very highly nutritious.
That's right.
So I don't know, maybe juicing them would work.
I would offer that when I cut the ends off of my vegetables, I always plant them.
Yes, looky here
you
what I
can
have on
take
my
that.
desk also. You're always
Yeah.
ahead of me here.
Very good, very good.
Look what this is, beet.
Wow.
Yes, and you can also just keep a pot of dirt and just put it right in the dirt too. You don't have to have the water first, but sometimes that works the easiest depending on your situation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I kind of know that, but I haven't gotten to the dirt box in my house. I think the problem is that my cat would jump into the dirt box thinking that it's the right place to poop because, you know, that's what she does outside in the dirt. So I think that's the biggest problem. But yeah, this is actually rare that these are so thin. I mean, most of it, maybe because the tops are very flat. They're very flat. Often I
about
leave
the
a little bit
light.
more.
It's about how much light you're getting each day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's a romaine lettuce that is growing these
Wow.
little plants there.
Yeah,
Kinda
it's
cute,
ready for
right?
a pot. I'd bury that sucker about a half an inch, quarter inch deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in any case, that again is an example of the fact that even the cut off pieces of a living plant are still alive
Taking
because
life.
the cell
Yeah.
tissue in those pieces remains alive for a long time. And that is why even, you know, in the a couple of decades ago, were all these arguments, you know, smoothies, you're breaking this stuff down so far that there's no life in them anymore. But I think there is, because the life of the cells is still there. Of course, you know, some people would say, I just was listening to Dr. Brooke Goldner, you know, when the cell wall is broken apart, then the nutrients are accessible if you drink the smoothie immediately. Keep it cool. So we can argue those details. The bottom line is that ingesting all these living plants, even the ones that we may think are not quite living anymore, but occasionally we add them. I'm just sprouting some garbanzo beans and some alfalfa as well. So even adding those will still allow us to have a vital cell reproduction in our bodies. So make those salads as luscious and as big and as varieteousness. No, that's not a word. What's the word? Variable and different as you'd like, or have the same big salad every day. Some people, like Matt, what's his name, would say, I had the same big salad with 3 avocados every evening, and I loved it for 3 years, or something like that. It's all good, but ingesting those raw enzymes and that cell tissue that we need for our body to stay alive longer and stay well longer. I mean, I can't stop my wrinkles or my flab on my arms, but I can feel like I'm just like when I was 30. There's one more thing that is very essential in raw salads and raw food altogether, and that is what's in here that's not so much in the other plants we were looking at.
It's seeds, nuts. Seeds and nuts. Yeah.
Hazelnuts, walnuts, sunflower seeds in this case.
Right.
Nuts and seeds have the fats that we also very, very much need, especially for our brain cells. And of course, we want to emphasize the omega-3s that are particularly in, of course, we know about flax seeds and chia seeds, but also in walnuts, in sunflower seeds, and hazelnuts. And of course, also in almonds, but they have to be the raw ones. They're hard to come by in the US. You have to have special sources.
And my dad, I relied for my fat pretty heavily on avocados and coconuts, being that I lived in Costa Rica the last 7 years, and nuts, prices of nuts and seeds is extremely prohibitive. I eat a little bit of sesame seed. I make my own tahini, and might put a little bit of my own tahini in a salad dressing. And maybe every 3 months, I love to have something like peanut sauce. But besides that, I don't consume seeds and nuts here, except rarely, because it's just prohibitive and I have easy access to avocados and coconuts. So I capitalize on those.
Now, I'm curious, Wendy, even though we need to wrap up, but what do you think caused your backache?
I have not been doing lots of physical labor for, oh goodness, 5 years or more. And I just worked my ass off for like 10 days in a row, doing lots of digging and lifting and moving and extreme weather conditions. And I just wouldn't stop and take care of myself. And my body said, you're done.
I hear you. Okay, so that is a very good explanation, because of course, if you don't keep your muscle tissue trained all the time and then stress it over the top, it will tell you, it will say, okay, Wendy, that's it. I ain't doing this no more.
Every day I had some excuse why this thing was more important than my self-care. And finally my body called trumps on me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is true.
Yeah,
for
but I wanted
all
to say
Indians.
about prepared food is anybody who's been in raw food for a very long time, who's sincerely, authentically interested in health, will come to the conclusions that mono diets and just straight unprepared food is the best way to go and the simplest to digest. But most people have so much emotional and cultural and psychological connection to food that that's the art, that's the love. Like, I do love people with food, and I could tell you that if you're really dying of stage 4 cancer, yeah, it's best to just do what I said and just eat mono meals one at a time. But if I want to love you with food, I can make these more complicated, complex, gorgeous, like you said, appealing salads and beet cakes. And like, I'm a gourmet raw food chef. I'm doing plant talks on plant milks, and I'm an ice cream queen. I'm known for fruit leather, a dehydrator queen. Like, I can make all that beautiful. And people who are really serious about their health aren't those people. So for me to market to those people, I'm actually marketing to people who are less serious to their health. And I felt that bothered me on a level. You know, it's more about commercializing than people that are actually transitioning. There's a saying in natural hygiene that if you're using a transitionary diet to get to a place, that's great. But if you're living in a transitionary diet, it's like greenwashing. It's like saying, look, I'm living in a transitionary diet. You're not actually getting there. So I see these things. It's kind of.
I hear you, Wendy, but I'm going to cut you off there because I do have a different view on what it means to be human in health. And what it means to be human means to be creative. And what it means to be human is to live in nature, with nature, be of nature, but also to create. We could not have art, we could not have buildings, we could not have creativity. Yes, that is a way of living, but to me it is very important, and to get to the joyfulness of being and creating, and that includes the joyfulness of creating beautiful food that is at the same time nourishing and replenishing. And I see that's what Hippocrates Health Institute does, this very strict diet for the healing. That's what Dr. Brooke Goldner does, etc. That's what we all do for a healing phase. But then it is wonderful to live a full life with a full expression in everything we do, whether it's decorating our home. You may see that there's a lot, no, you don't see it in this. There's a lot of art in my house. And of course, we as humanity develop in these cultures that come and go. And to have cultures that are healthier than older cultures is a wonderful thing. But I cannot take culture out of food and be an intelligent human at the same time. That to me doesn't work. So I love Jo Willard. Jo Willard was a natural hygienist and, was on WBAI in New York, the Pacifica radio station, and had her, would explain exactly that, what you were just saying, that, eat your cabbage on its own and eat your apple on its own and not together. I think that's, it's silly. So yes, if it works for you, if you love that, do it by all means. But the people who grow old are the ones who are also highly cultured. One of my students in Los Angeles was from the Arab Emirates, was it from Oman or one of the smaller countries? And he said his uncle lived in an oasis in the desert and walked every day to the rest of the family outside of the oasis. He grew to be 132 and was walking and participating in the family culture, etc. And that movement and that walking and the culture that I experienced in this student's family, because I was invited to them also, was just wonderful. So I think culture is very important. We just need to be a little wiser in creating culture. I don't want to live without culture because I think I'm living longer because I don't have the evidence. I mean, I'd love to hear from you, or, you know, email me to tell me which people lived on mono food eating long and happily. I just don't see it. Yeah, Joe Willard was wonderful. She was riding her bicycle into her 80s. But yeah, then she barely reached 90, I think. So to me, that's also not old. I don't know whether I'll make it, obviously. But yeah, to me, that whole cultural element is very important. And that's, I mean, I've had these long discussions with Brian and Anna Maria Clement, you know, of why we humans are humans as opposed to chimpanzees or dolphins, for that matter. Also highly intelligent creatures, but not creative. And tell me if you disagree. So, but of course, we get into a whole different philosophical question there. What is life as a human on this beautiful planet? I love this little planet.
Yes.
And I think the human connection, the creation, the togetherness, the struggles we have with each other to understand how different we each are and to acknowledge that, and still to provide all this nourishment so that everybody can have a better functioning body is so important to me. And I really didn't mean to poo-poo the mono foods. I just don't see that they actually help health in the long run. So, and I'm all flushed because I was so excited about this particular presentation. I don't know why, more so than many others that I've done. Yeah, because it's so both so simple and so deep, understanding what food really is and how world politics have taken away food from humans, and not only humans. I mean, we've had many thousands of species already have gone extinct because of our chemical farming and our, let's speak the big word, our capitalist system, which is ruining everything. So we need to invent a different system. All right, any more questions? Monique, Ed. First name, last name. I was trying to see if there's a name in there, but there isn't. Shirley Potash, Paul, Sharon, Derry. Shoot. I love answering questions.
Well, Joanna, thank you so much. This is Shirley.
Yes, I see you. Mhm.
I grow geraniums and nasturtiums. I put those in salads. I had the onion flowers. They were in season for 2 months and they have beautiful white flowers. Maybe that's what was in your onions. I couldn't see at that time. And I put those on salads. I decorate my salads. Every salad has to be a work of art.
Thank you, Shirley.
So that
Exactly.
is creating. And
Yes.
at Hippocrates, everything was, separated. And then you took a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but nobody really tried to decorate, to appreciate that and sit in meditation and look at. And when you're taking small bites and appreciating each little morsel that you're eating, this really makes you feel so appreciated and so satisfied. But
Yeah,
what-
thank you for saying that, Shirley. And the interesting thing is also that when we enjoy food or when we enjoy sights, when we enjoy smells, etc., when we enjoy our sensual experiences, we actually create endorphins and serotonin, and we literally create longevity.
Yes, using all the seven senses and smelling them. And one thing I've been doing though to get enough exercise in, for cherries, and I will do the stand-ups 24 times out of my chair and get down, but I'm chewing at the same time. Otherwise, I wouldn't I do so much exercise now because I fell last year because of my eyes, but I'm back to, I got a brace on now and I'm back to improving myself. I can do so much with the brace and I am just Miss Energetic now.
Right, and you're up there in your 80s, right?
Yes, late 80s.
Bravo. Congratulations, Shirley. Wonderful. Okay, any more comments or questions?
Oh, Joanna, do
Yeah.
you ever get cold though and need some hot tea or something that can warm you up? Like
Really?
a little warm soup.
Yeah, I've noticed, Shirley, that I used to be cold all the time because I have very low blood pressure and a little hole in my heart. And, as a kid, I was always cold and bad in sports, etc. But now that I exercise, walk, or run regularly, and that I drink more water, I think when we get cold, it often has to do with lack of hydration as well. So,
well, I drink 64 ounces, up to 64 ounces. I just have to urinate often.
I can't do that, but bravo, yes.
But that doesn't make me warm because I also had I was paralyzed as a child, but so I do have some warm tea. I have, oh God, it's various.
I do too. Occasionally, I make myself a cup of tea. So I agree that can be a very good thing to have.
And little cayenne pepper.
You know me, I'm the cayenne
Queen.
Clients called me. Oh, but you're the cayenne queen.
Yes. Yes.
Cayenne and everything. Yes, of course, those hot foods have a healing and a warming effect. Which is ironic, or not ironic, actually, it's wise that hot foods are eaten mostly in the hotter areas of the planet, because they, of course, also encourage sweating, and sweating
Cools
down the body. Exactly.
Yeah.
So do you believe in saunas then?
In what?
Saunas.
Believe in, I don't like the word believe
Oh,
at all.
do
I-
saunas.
I don't know much about, I mean, the few times that I've been in regular old saunas, I've always enjoyed it. The, I find the, what are they called? Saunas that you just sit in with your head outside, the ultraviolet, I think it is, or what's it called?
Well,
What are
that's
those called,
a
Shirley?
sauna.
Hmm?
It's a type of sauna. There's a kind of tent one you sit in.
Yes, with your head
on the
sticking out.
chair.
I thought that was, I don't know, I didn't find that very exciting.
No, you
But
can
the
sit in
regular good old cedar,
wood.
the wood saunas, I've done and I've enjoyed that a lot, especially then jumping into cold water. So I think that's very useful, especially in the colder parts of the planet. Where infrared sauna, exactly.
Yes,
Monique, thank
yes, that was the name.
Yes, infrared sauna. And of course, a lot of people swear by it, and I'm sure they're good. But I don't personally use them that much. Maybe, we all pick our battles, I suppose, and pick our remedies, right? Yeah.
Correct. If you
Yeah,
have really
so-
poor circulation.
I mean, there's so many great modalities. I was really, really happy to find Wim Hof and those breathing exercises incredibly helpful. Oh, also helpful for getting warm. Of course, Wim Hof, the Iceman, right? Who has the longest, lots of records, running above the polar circle in shorts, barefoot, and, and all of those kind of crazy things. But he's a wonderful human being who has understood and taught us that not only does breathing and not breathing off and on help us. Of course, the old yogis already did practices like that, but the way he does it, makes a lot of sense to me. He has taught us that we can at least influence our biology with our intention. And of course, there's Dr. Joe Dispenza and others who have worked on those issues as well. And that is all very helpful too. But to me, the basis is always, let's get the biology straight and then add on some other stuff if we got the time to do that. And I feel I often don't have the time if I still want to do things in the world.
How
But
do you
yeah.
spell how do you spell Wim Hof?
Wim Hof, let me put it in here. Mr. Wim. Wim is his first name and Hof is his last name with one F. The Iceman, he's often called, or the Wim Hof method is this breathing method that he's developed. And he does these ice baths, and I had already done showers with a cold shower last, but now I do only cold showers, and I find that very invigorating. Every morning I do my little cold shower, head to toe. Wonderful. All right,
Wow.
guys. So what's in your salad? All of this and more. I really wanted to ask, what other things can be put into your salad? Come up with something, pineapples, melons, watermelon, all kinds of roots, right? From celeriac to parsnip to, they can all be put in your salad. Monique, what do you say?
Cilantro.
Oh, cilantro is of course in my dressing here too.
Yes.
There it is. Yes.
Yes.
Mushrooms,
other
seaweed.
herbs.
Let's say mushrooms and
Oh,
seaweed.
yes. We haven't
That's
even
right.
talked about mushrooms. Thank you, Wendy.
Yes.
Mushrooms and seaweed. Yes.
Yes, I did my
Mhm.
master's degree on the immune system with mushrooms back 40 years ago.
Oh,
They're-
congratulations.
That's great. They're powerful immune builders.
And
Yes.
now they're just using it. You can get powdered, but it's supposed to be raw. You can even get powdered, but I do mushrooms every day.
Yeah,
You do
Mhm.
mushrooms.
that's right.
That
Ration.
sounds shamanic.
I've been a wild food hunter in Wisconsin for before
When are you
moving.
breaking up? Say that again.
I've been a wild food hunter in Wisconsin for 30 years before moving to Costa Rica. And I was a mushroom grower, and I sold 3 different kinds for about 3 years in Viroqua, but I had 9 kinds planted at my farm when I sold and came here 7 years ago. I love mushrooms. I feel like I'm a little mushroom person myself.
Wonderful, wonderful. That is so cool. Yeah, we didn't have much mushrooms when I grew up in my family, so I had to like get to using mushrooms. I make mushroom gravies and things like that, so mixing with other things. But yeah, not enough. And I certainly don't do enough seaweed because I never quite developed a taste for the seaweed
Mm.
salads that were first
Mm.
offered to me in, that you could buy at the bar, at the salad bar in health food stores. So
Uh-huh.
I'm
Mhm.
sure there are ways of making seaweed tastier than what I've come across.
Yes,
There
you can
are,
get
absolutely. I guarantee it.
you can get varieties of seaweed,
Mhm.
and I've used it for 70 years. Dulce is my favorite. It is
Me
sweet.
too.
Mine too.
No.
Wendy, you were saying?
Yeah, Dulce is my favorite too. I can guarantee you there are really great ways. There was this woman here. There's all these people from different places here in Costa Rica. She was from Russia, and she made me a seaweed salad, and I was so impressed. And I'm already really hard to impress. I'm pretty good chef. I was visiting my uncle in Southern California. He took me to this giant grocery store that was like an Asian import store, and they had so many different kinds of seaweed, and already like the deli section with the fresh prepared salads. And I must have left there with 5 different kinds of seaweed salad in my basket that I'd never seen or heard of before. Colored, it grows in different colors, red, white, and
Yes.
blue. It's
Oh,
incredible.
yeah.
The Asians really have the seaweed culture down. Many of the Asian countries. My daughter was into Korean food a lot, and there was also all kinds of different seaweeds that I'd never heard of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yum.
yeah,
So
much
my neighbors are growing spirulina now. My neighbor just went to the other side of Costa Rica to learn how to grow spirulina in a tank, and he's been going there regularly to learn. They got all their stuff set up, and they just are starting their batch now. And I've bought it from them and ate it, and I had such an incredible physical reaction whenever I eat seaweed in general, but this was like way more vibrant. It reminded me of Klamath Lake super blue green algae that I was a distributor of some 30 years ago.
a positive reaction.
It was
Okay.
so good. Oh my God. I
God.
felt like I was just grounded, and I just like sunk into myself somehow. It
Wonderful.
was wonderful.
Yes, wonderful. So yeah, I want to learn more about seaweed and what to do and how to do it. So I'd be happy to hear more, learn more.
And for getting older and helping the brain is lion's mane.
Yes, a mushroom too is really good. I use that too.
Lion-
Which mushroom?
Lion's mane.
Lion's mushroom.
Oh, can you put that in the chat? I don't
Lion?
think I understand or know. the name.
LION ES and then
Lion's mane.
Yes.
LS.
Oh, okay, yes.
Hmm.
You can get it at Whole Foods.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can get it in powder, but I don't know for sure if it's raw in powder, but you can get it as a mushroom. Very challenging to find though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As a mushroom, most of it was like supplements, so to speak, but yeah.
yeah.
Well, I wouldn't take it in a pill.
Try mountain rose herbs. I've gotten my cordyceps and reishi and chaga from them, and it's an excellent quality.
Awesome. Yeah, again, more to learn. And I love those mushrooms that you can just chop up and throw into either a salad or, like I said, I make gravies or mixes in my Vitamix.
Oh, I used to make for events the mushroom pate, raw mushroom pate.
Awesome,
it
Shirley.
takes-
Drop me the
it takes-
recipe.
I haven't been doing because I make a raw, I grind, I make my.
Okay, okay, guys. I would love to, again, I'd love some more seaweed recipes and some more mushroom recipes. Those are really the two plant food categories that I know are so important and I don't do enough of. So I am deprived.
Dried powdered mushrooms. I used to often have excess, like if you have mushrooms and you don't sell them, then they don't live long. So I became a dehydrator queen. So dried mushroom powder I use for flavoring all kinds of things, anything I'm making, and you can just sprinkle it on things and it's just absolutely lovely.
Sounds
Your soup,
awesome,
savory
yeah.
soups.
And you can you can buy dried whole mushrooms
Mhm.
and then grind them up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
put them
yeah.
in your blender or your coffee grinder, sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm. Yes, so much fun. And of course, there are lots more wild edibles, which is also why I'm doing the Learn to Be More Self-Sustaining course, which includes foraging and wild harvesting stuff. Yeah, I appreciate very, very much learning about things that I don't know enough about in those two categories, definitely. There are also plants that grow in sweet water, in creeks and ponds, etc.
That's what spirulina is. The algae is. It's fresh water.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
And chlorella is not?
Yes, I believe it is.
Also, yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that's also in the oceans.
Chlorella is the green stuff in all plants. I believe that's
Right, but it's really hard to get it a good source where they really do a good job breaking down the cell wall. Can't
That's-
digest it
Yeah,
otherwise.
you're thinking chlorophyll.
Nothing chlorella.
Yeah, I know, but Wendy was saying that's the
Oh.
green stuff in all our green plants, but you're thinking chlorophyll, I think, for that. And chlorella is a particular algae also, right?
Yes.
Yes. The
You're right.
Japanese,
That's correct.
Japanese are very good in this, but of course they had that breakage of and it contaminated some of the water, but
Shirley, you're fading. Say the line.
the Japanese have been doing the chlorella for years. They were experts
Yeah.
in that.
Yes. Again, the whole of all of Asia has been doing seaweed so much better than any of the rest of the world.
But the
Yeah.
waters near also in China now very contaminated.
Yeah, that's of course the problem for everything, our soils and our waters. That's why it's so important that we all preach, at least eat everything organic, even though there's the argument, oh, well, that stuff blows over everything anyway. It still is better because you're making a statement that you want organic. You're making that consumer statement and you're forcing the industry to move into that direction.
I come from Vernon County, Wisconsin, which has the most organic small family farms of any county in the United States. It's next to Mendocino County, California. And I could safely say 10 years ago that the whole idea that we could trust any kind of labeling that's happening is false. It's just gone way, way beyond that. Really, the only way to know if your food is clean is that you grew it yourself, you wild harvested yourself, or you know who grew it and you're in their garden. I'm sorry, but there is not a package in the store that I can trust anymore.
Well, yeah, that's if you want 100%. There's no 100%. I still think it's important that we make that statement. We want organic and we're going for the better, the more we're going to buy it.
But the only way to do that is to give them your money, which is supporting what they're doing, and that's why they're there.
Well, of course, but we all need to live, and we live in this society, and not everybody is able to live in Costa Rica in the wild.
No, I grew my own food in Wisconsin for 30 years before moving here.
Yeah, yeah,
Well-
that's what I mean. Not everybody is able to do that. And there's so much else to do in the world. And I think we can still make the better choices and drive that message further. And of course, there's a lot more than just buying organic, but it is a very important part of pushing into that direction.
Well,
The
one
more we're
thing
aware,
is,
the more
Because
we
then the
need to
stand, so then the
insist.
standards will start to change, and then they'll those that are not having either a third party certifying and so forth. I mean, at some point it's going to flush itself out where, as Johanna's saying, that it will force them to have the actual certification or something that will give a little more credence to the source being more organic than not. It's the fraud. I mean, the falsifying can go so far because competition will root that out as well.
well, one thing is to get the certification, it may take 7 years. It takes that long to change the soil.
Right.
And because my grandmother had that, but had everything organic. Now, one thing about the organic, it will always have little wormholes in it. It will not be perfect. With perfection and pesticides on it, it grows huge. And it is
Exactly.
looking, and you don't want anything that's perfect looking.
Now, you're talking to a farmer who has grown perfect vegetables, and I have 30 years of photos to prove it. Now, everything we say is relative to something else, and unless we're speaking on what relative conditions relative to something else, it's meaningless. So we really can't make
No,
big
it's
grand
not meaningless,
generalizations.
Wendy. I don't like those absolutisms.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, well,
It's not meaningless. It's just they're all shades of
There is such a thing as indoor greenhouse growing, where we do produce perfect fruits because there are no insects.
right.
Oh,
But then I
absolutely.
would immediately say that's not a healthy living plant in the long run, because it needs real exposure to sunlight. It needs real exposure to the life around it, including the insects.
Greenhouses
again,
have all of
that's-
those things. That's exactly what they have. They're not lacking sunlight in a greenhouse. A greenhouse means it has sunlight. In fact, it can't be a greenhouse unless it has sunlight.
Correct.
It
Like
can't,
through
but
glass is not the same. I mean, I've created greenhouses with a colleague, but yeah, it's not the same. It's just like saying, running on your treadmill in the house is the same as running under trees outdoors. It just isn't. There are variations, and I mean, it's still better is to run in the house on your treadmill than not to run at all. That's the other, again, there's this
Right.
whole scale of better, and it's always good to go a little better.
you can't supersede what happens in the wild in nature. That's why people are saying you want to get the various sources of greens or sea nutrients from the wild waters versus controlled waters or a tank or something like that. If you're going to do something like ginseng, the most powerful and highest constituents of genocides come from the wild ginseng out in the wild, what's got to weather all the various conditions, the extreme sun, the wind, and everything else. And they have certain areas where it's controlled to kind of similar to like a greenhouse, but doesn't have the same vibrancy. You don't get the same impact on the body, the immune system, the endurance. There's no substitute to the natural sunlight, wind, water, rain.
Yeah, and again, Jerry, I much appreciate that explanation. And again, it is still better to have the indoor grown tomato that looks perfect.
Oh yeah, of
and
course.
is not
I meant that
pesticide
the
ridden
best would be
than to have the pesticide ridden one.
correct. No, I meant just the best would be.
I agree, there's a
yeah.
broad scale, and we
Correct.
all do one step at a time. there's no, I'm always saying, look, I'm still driving a car. I'm sitting on a computer right now, even though I know that EMFs and all kinds of exhausts from my car, etc., are a problem. But I live in this time in history. I participate and I'm working at moving this culture in the right direction. That's all.
Right.
Participating in moving us into the right direction. There are no absolutisms
No,
Right.
on planet Earth,
Joanna,
period.
you are wonderful in saying that we're all in the process of growing and learning and adapting. And that if we arrive at the perfection, we are not living. We are
Okay, on this beautiful word of wisdom from Shirley, I'm going to close the what's in your raw salad. Mastermind, this has been wonderful, and what an incredibly lively discussion. I love it. And I thank you all for being here, and I thank you for watching this whenever you're watching this at a later time. This has been an incredibly exciting talk and demonstration and Q&A. And see you next time for the next mastermind. It's probably on sweets and the sweetness of life and the sugars that are part of life, not the ones that are killing life, but the good sugars. So on the sweetness of life is probably the next mastermind. So don't miss it. It will come, and you can register in advance for it as soon as I have it up.
I should be happy to send you a recipe for it.
Awesome. Please do. Yes.
thank you.
Love you guys. See
Thank
you
you,
next
everyone.
time.
So much. It was beautiful. Lovely. Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great afternoon.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you for
love
being here.
Joanna,
All
and
right.
everybody else who contributed.
Mm.
Thank you,
Bless
sure.
you. Bless. All right. Bless you.